From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
And good evening and welcome into Open Line. I'm Chuck Long and I'll be along with you for the next hour. Now, I'm glad you're tuning in, especially tonight, because we were talking about something that's very important. It can affect a lot of people, whether it's your friends, your family, you personally. We're going to talk all about medical malpractice, because things can go wrong in the hospital. Things can go wrong at the doctors. And if they do go wrong, you need somebody who can help you in that situation. And one of our favorite guests, he has been here many times. He's one of our regulars here at News Channel 5. Clint Kelly from the Kelly firm. It's good to see you, Clint.
Good to see you too, Chuck.
Thank you very much. Now, like I said, you've been here many times, but I've got to tell you, I have seen you worldwide. I mean, seriously, because of a story that has recently, Nick reported on it here at Channel 5, and it's a very scary situation. It's exactly why you need someone who understands what to do when something goes wrong and who you can go talk to, and that's exactly what we would want to do with you.
That's what happened here, and that's why I'm glad I'm doing this show, and I'm glad I'm able to give some advice and tips to the public. And what happened to this lady that we'll talk about as we go on here, it was preventable, not by mom, but by the doctor and by the hospital. But these situations that take place typically aren't what I consider to be outrageous, but what happened to this lady was outrageous, and I think that's why you saw this story going viral.
Right. And it definitely did. And this happened actually at the University Medical Center in Lebanon, and it really kind of got our attention because we knew that, we'd heard what had happened. And then basically after the story aired here on Channel 5, Nick Barris did the story with you, and basically it was just picked up worldwide. News outlets from, CNN to People Magazine to just, on and on and on. Because people look and they see a story like this and they're like, could that really happen? They think, oh, I've just heard of that possibility, but it really happened. And so why don't you describe just a little bit? We're going to show the story in just a minute, but just a little bit about kind of what happened in this situation.
Sure. This was Mama and Daddy go to the hospital to deliver their child, and shortly after the delivery, the baby's taken to the nursery, which is a fairly common practice. And the doctor, the pediatrician who was assigned to this patient, went into the nursery and had gone in with the mindset that he was going to perform a procedure on the tongue called a frenulectomy. And it is a type of surgery, even though it's fairly minimal. But he got the babies mixed up. He didn't check the forms to make sure that he had gotten consent from the parents, which he did not have, and then proceeded to cut on this child's tongue. And when the child was brought back to Mama and Daddy in the room, Mama noticed that there was a canker-like sore and bleeding under the tongue. And so she asked the nurse who came in there shortly thereafter, what happened to my baby? And the nurse started going through the chart. She's sitting there checking things off, and she does a double take and backs up and says, I'm going to have the doctor give you a call about this. And sometime thereafter, the doctor calls on the phone and tells Mama, I'm sorry, I misidentified your baby and I performed a frenulectomy. I wasn't supposed to do it on the baby.
Oh my gosh, so they actually operated on the wrong infant.
And it's undisputed. It's right there in the chart.
Yeah, it's right there. And we're going to show that to you in just a little bit. As always here on Open Line, we are glad that you're tuning in with us. And of course, this is your forum. If you have questions, if you have comments, the number that you can call is right there on your screen at 737-7587. We are going to take a couple of the calls right now, and then we will be showing you the story that Clint was just telling us about. So right now, we're going to go to the lines. And Sherman, we're glad that you're joining us here on Open Line. Do you have a question or a comment for Clint?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Involves my wife. My wife has had cancer treatment at Tennessee Oncology. What the doctor forgot to do with the chemo was to tell my wife that it could cause heart problems. Now she's got congestive heart failure. Should the doctor, before the treatment began, should have told her that that was one of the side effects? And do you think that we have a possible lawsuit against Tennessee Oncology? And I'd like to hear, because we were not told that the chemo could cause congestive heart failure. And I'll hold on the line if you have a follow-up question for me.
All right, thank you, Clint. Sherman.
First of all, there is a doctrine known as informed consent in which the patient is required to be given instructions about a drug or a treatment or a procedure so that the patient can give what's called informed consent. They know what the risks are. The patient has a right to control his or her body, and so it's very important to get that information. What I don't know, Sherman, is I don't know if this particular chemotherapy has as one of its risks congestive heart failure or some type of heart condition. That's something your doctor can tell you, or another doctor can tell you, or perhaps you can look it up online. A lot of times you can find out these things. But if it is what we call it in the law a material risk, but in regular day words, that just means something you need to know. If you're supposed to be told and you're not told, then you have a potential lawsuit, a medical malpractice lawsuit, and what they call is a violation of informed consent. Did that answer your question, Sherman?
Well, does that mean, would you represent me, or who do I call to get some representation if you think I have a case?
Yeah,
maybe you.
Yes, you can call my office in the morning and ask to speak to Pat. She's the one that does the reviews of all the cases that people who call and want their claims reviewed, and she'll get a history from you and provide that history to me. And you can call my office, which is 615-824-3703, and that number will pop up at the conclusion of the show.
And actually, it's on the screen right now, Sherman, so if you want to go ahead and write that down, you can contact, as Clint said, his office tomorrow and give him that information, and you can go from there. Well, we appreciate you calling in, Sherman. Have a good evening. All right, so that's exactly the kind of situation that, a specialist like you, when we say, specialist, there's not a lot of lawyers in this area who are really specialists in this area. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm a board certified medical malpractice specialist. There are a very few number of us, particularly in Nashville. There's probably a handful of us here in Nashville, and statewide, if you look online, there's probably maybe 20 or 25 of us. In order to become a specialist, you have to try a certain number of medical malpractice jury trials. You have to sit for an oral examination, a written test, and you have to be recommended by other members of the judiciary who have seen you try cases and will recommend that you be admitted as a specialist because you've done enough of this work. And it does require a great deal of specialty because the law is constantly changing. The medicine can be very difficult to manage unless you know what you're doing, and there's also a lot of expense associated in these cases, and so you have to be able to financially overcome some obstacles, be able to finance the case in order to get to trial, because some cases, Chuck, can cost $50,000, $75,000 to get to trial.
Sure. And if you were just tuning in, we were talking a little bit earlier at the top of the show. You never obviously want any kind of harm to happen at a hospital or at a doctor's office or from a doctor or from a nurse. And while it never may be intended, sometimes that does happen. And one of the stories that just recently, and Clint was involved with this eventually, is a story that we reported here at News Channel 5, and it literally, it kind of leaves you in a little bit of disbelief. But we talked about it at the top of the show. A child, an infant, was operated on. The wrong infant was operated on. And so we are going to show that story to you right now so that we can talk about it a little bit more on the backside, that you can see what can happen in this situation. Now, I do want to give you a heads up. It does get a little bit graphic in this story, so just be aware of that. So take a look. Nick Barris is doing the reporting, so take a look and we'll talk about it on the backside.
Oh my God.
Little Nate was born healthy and happy, a normal newborn, which is all his parents could hope for.
The baby, perfect, healthy, beautiful.
Jennifer Melton delivered at University Medical Center in Lebanon. Not long after the birth, her newborn went for what Melton thought would be a routine physical. A couple hours later, Nate was back.
At that point, the nurse started to mention the procedure that had been performed on him, that they had clipped his tongue.
Somehow, some way, a doctor, without the parents' signed consent, performed a surgical procedure on Nate that apparently was meant for another child.
Essentially, they took our child, who was 100% healthy, nursing well, no issues at all, and just took him out of the nursery and cut his mouth. At that point, I began to cry hysterically.
There's no excuse for operating on the wrong baby. None.
Melton's attorney Clint Kelly says the doctor performed a frenulectomy. As this news file video shows, that's cutting a flap of skin from under the child's tongue. It can be an uncomfortable procedure for the baby.
They have to go in there, they just snip.
A frenulectomy is a treatment for infants born with a condition that restricts the tongue's range of motion. But little Nate's tongue was normal.
It's recklessness. There's no excuse for cutting on a healthy child. There's no excuse for mixing babies up in a hospital.
The doctor didn't try to make any excuses. In a progress report from the hospital, he wrote, "I had asked for the wrong infant. I had likely performed the procedure on an infant different than the one I intended to, and I admitted my mistake and apologized."
They were sorry they made a mistake.
But for Melton, that's small consolation. She trusted the hospital would care for her newborn. Now she and her attorney wonder what the future holds for little Nate.
We don't know whether the child's going to have any speech problems. We don't know if the child's going to have any eating problems. The concern here is this was a healthy baby. It was supposed to leave the hospital healthy and instead was harmed by the hospital.
Nick Barris, News Channel 5.
Well, and as you can see, that is every parent's worst nightmare. We are going to tell you, kind of do a little follow-up and give you some more information on that. We are here with attorney Clint Kelly. Of course, you saw him in that story. This story was picked up by news outlets all over the world, and it basically did go viral. A lot of people questioning and commenting on that. We are going to take a short break. We have a lot of you on the line with us. If you can hold with us through the break, we will get to as many of those calls as we can after the break. You're watching Open Line. We'll be right back.